is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft beer and craft chocolate. My name is David Nilsen. I'm a professional beer writer and an advanced cicerone, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or at her website, annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. In this episode, we'll talk with Arron Liu of Chocobien in Hong Kong. Chocobien produces many truly unique bars that employ flavors and ingredients from other artisan food and beverage segments, including beer, whiskey, coffee, sake, tea, and more. Arron talks about the ideas behind these bars, the partnerships and processes that went into their development, and the satisfaction this curious and creative maker finds in achieving the flavors he could only hold in his imagination at the start of each experiment. I became aware of Chocobien relatively recently when I saw their beer-fermented chocolate bar on Instagram. Anything with the words beer and chocolate together will stop my scrolling in its tracks, and I immediately ordered this bar as well as their whiskey-aged bar, one aged with coffee and one made with rice koji. I knew right away this was a maker I was going to want to get to know, so I reached out, and after the difficulties of coordinating time zones between Hong Kong and Ohio, I was able to talk with Arron Liu, the founder and chocolate maker at Chocobien. Listen in as he tells the stories behind these unique bars. Arron, tell me a little bit about how you got started as a chocolate maker.
I think I started because I learned the making of dessert many years ago. Actually, I have an ice cream and chocolate shop. I started business in 2003. We go on to have more shops in 2009. And then after that, because of the rental in Hong Kong, it increased a lot. So it's very difficult to keep all the shops in Hong Kong. So in 2017, I closed all shops and do the online market. And then later on, I concentrate more on the chocolate making. So this is the history of my chocolate making.
So then tell me a little bit about Chocobien and how this got started and what it's all about.
I set up the brand of Chocobien in 2009. It's the first shop to have both ice cream and chocolate in my shop. At that moment, we just buy the couverture from the suppliers in Hong Kong. Although the couverture are made in France and Belgium, the quality is already what they call is tailor-made by these kinds of manufacturers. They have only a certain percentage for us to choose to make our bonbon, truffle, and desserts such as chocolate cake, those things. So we are very restricted on the selection. So at that moment, I've always found that we cannot have any breakthrough on the use of the chocolate from these kinds of supplies. Not until 2016, I got in touch with the Bean to Bar chocolate. It's very interesting. And then I just found the information on internet. And I think if I can purchase the raw cocoa bean from the cocoa farmers directly, it may help us to create something more interesting rather than using the couverture from the existing suppliers. So we start to do a lot of the experiment, just try by error. And then we bought a lot of the machines, such as the refiner, what they call the husk remover, those things, and then try to do the experiment to do our own Bean to Bar chocolate.
And how long did it take you before you felt like you were ready to start selling your own chocolate?
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, we don't have any expert in Hong Kong. We were supposed to be the first one to learn how to use these kinds of technique. And then we cannot ask anybody to help. Just watch the movie or the video on the YouTube and then find out all the information through the internet, just checking Bean to Bar. And then we have to bought the Bean to Bar products from different countries, such as from Scotland, the most famous one. I think you know. And then from Finland, and then from America, a lot of the famous brands, they are very famous in bean to bar, and then got the awards as well. So we just bought from them and then try to taste, and they try to make a difference. Write down all the notes. What is the difference between these kinds of bean to bar chocolate comparing to the couverture, comparing to the chocolate in the market? And then we try to roast our beans. I think I got the advantages because I understand the roasting of coffee before I am a coffee roaster. So I got the advantage to use the roaster to roast the cocoa beans, start from different temperature and the time, so as to try to do different experiment and then find out the taste. And then it's very interesting that after we have passed through the stage of the roasting, we have to learn how to control the flavors by refining and cooling as well. The process takes a long time. It needs 2 to 3 days to do the cooling, and then after that we have to do the experiment of the aging. How long should be the best period of the aging, and then finally we have to do the tempering. Tempering is not difficult because I used it to make a lot of the chocolate before, so tempering is easy to me. And then finally we have to do the tasting of the products. It takes a lot of the time and tries to see the tasting is what we are targeted to make. And then I think the whole time took me around 1.5 to 2 years to do such kinds of experiment. And then after that time, I found the taste is fine now. That we have given the examples of these kinds of final products to a lot of my fans and the chef, and then some of the people are the wine taster. They tasted our products and they said, this is very good. It's comparing to the quality of other chocolate and even comparing to the products of the other bean to bar makers. And they said it is very good. They like it and then they enjoy it. So I was very satisfied with these results, and then say we can launch the product to the market.
So where are you sourcing your cacao from now that you're actually working directly with the source?
Oh, yes. When we are sourcing the cacao beans, we have to be very carefully to do this, because I think I have been working on the coffee market before and understand both coffee and cocoa beans have the same problem. That is the child labor, and the prices are not fair. They are not really paid to the farmers directly. The wholesaler and the distributor take a lot of the profits. It is not fair. And then sometimes we cannot find the high quality cocoa beans as well. So later on, I just do the research on the internet and even Instagram to find the cocoa farmers. And then we contact them directly and I ask them, and can you send your cocoa beans to Hong Kong? Some of them, they said it's too far away, they cannot do this. And then some of them, they will say, we are ordering only in a small batch, a very small amount. They are dealing with the large amount, such as 1 or 2 kilotons. So we cannot afford to do this. We can only afford to buy 60 to 100 kilo for our small batch experiment and then production. So later on, we find some of the farmers, they are willing to do this. I promised them to pay higher price to them. And we pay all the logistic charges, such as the cocoas from Madagascar, from Peru, and from Indonesia. We pay all the logistic and the shipping charges. So later on, we got the cocoa beans to Hong Kong, and then we just keep on doing the experiment and the production. And then finally, we are keeping a very good relationship with the farmers. So we are happy to do this because we believe we can help them to support their lives, and then we can have the contribution to this sustainability and protect the forest. And this is our mission as well.
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Final Gravity Issue 5 is now available in the shop on beantobarstool.com. This 5th issue of our zine telling personal, human-centered stories from the world of beer is full of great articles. Bono Segudu tells the story of the South African beer style Umkombothi, poignantly explaining its role in her culture and the importance in her family's celebrations and milestones. Maria Krugliak writes about discovering the Portuguese half pint after moving to Portugal during the COVID-19 pandemic. Amanda Bruns and Obakeng Molope discuss the water spirit Mamuhaswa and the collaboration beer they brewed in her honor. These and numerous other stories fill the 56 pages of this zine. We've expanded it and added a few features for this issue. It's full color, full of lots of beautiful photography and art. Definitely check this out. It's on beantobarstool.com/shop. You can purchase this issue or subscribe, and you can always support us on Patreon and get extra perks as well. Cheers. Yeah, that's great. Well, I've been really interested by some of the more unusual bars that you've done that I've tasted. You had one that is beer fermented, and I was really curious about that. Tell me about the process of developing that bar and how you're doing that.
Oh, that is very interesting. Actually, very beginning that I have done something very simple, just mixing the ingredient with the chocolate we have made. It's not difficult. And then later on, I met some of the craft beer in Hong Kong. The craft beer maker in Hong Kong, actually in Hong Kong, we have already got a lot of the people working on the craft beer market. And then they have their beer production factory in Hong Kong. And I met some of them and talking about how they are working on the process to do the craft beer. They were so kind to share their expertise to me. And then I find it's quite interesting that it takes a lot of the process to do the beer. And I'm just thinking, what should I do if I want to make some chocolate with the beer tasting or carrying the tasting profiles of the beer? And then ask those beer makers, do you have any suggestion to me if I want to make these kinds of chocolate? And then they said they don't know about the chocolate, but they suggest try something different from the normal alcoholic chocolate. It's not mixing the beer and the chocolate together. I was so curious about their technique on making the beer. And I asked them, what about having the fermentation and the process using Chocobien instead of the normal ingredient of the beer, such as barley, those things? And then they said, why not? Just try. And then they were so generous. They give all the ingredients and including the germinated barley, and then having the hope, the yeast, those things to me. And then I just doing some experiment in small batch first, and then try to do the experiment with the cocoa beans with these kinds of beer ingredients. And then I think I have failed at least 10 times at the very beginning. The time how to control the temperature and how long should I do the fermentation, and then do I have to control the acidity and the alkaline, those things. And then later on just keep on working on it. And then finally, suddenly one day, and I find it's working. I can smell something from the cocoa beans. And then this is the first stage that I have already passed. And then I have to roast the cocoa bean to see if still have the beer taste on the final product. And then after I roast it, and then it still have something inside, and then I do the refine and congealing, and then tempering. Oh, that is great. And I was so enjoyed at that moment because it got some taste of the beer. And then I was thinking, so can I do something to intensify the taste of the beer in the chocolate? Because it just got a little bit, it's not very strong. Some people may not be having the sensory to notice the existence of these kinds of beer. So I keep on doing more experiment, and then finally I'm getting more and more. It seems it's okay, and then I just done the product.
That's so interesting. So you were taking the raw cocoa beans, putting it in a container with malted barley, hops, beer yeast. You're just putting it all in there together?
Yeah. At the very beginning, I do this kinds of experiment, and I find it's so expensive to use the fresh cocoa bean because we have to buy the fresh cocoa pod from the farmers and then send by UPS to Hong Kong. It takes 2 to 3 days to Hong Kong because we don't want to see the fresh cocoa pods have any problem on the long shipping period. And then after we receive the cocoa pod, we have to cut it out and then take the fresh beans and then do the fermentation inside the fermentation bottle. And then at the very beginning, it's very expensive and take a long time to wait for the fresh cocoa pod. And then later on, I was thinking that can I use the dried cocoa bean? And then we do another batch with the dried cocoa bean. And then actually we found that it's very interesting. It doesn't make any big difference of the fresh cocoa bean and the dried cocoa bean. And then later on, we use the dried cocoa bean to do the other experiment. And then, it's better. Actually, we save the cost on the shipping and then save the time to wait for the fresh cocoa bean. Yeah.
That's interesting that there wasn't much of a difference. I would have expected it, if it were fresh, to be very different in terms of like bitterness and astringency.
That's why. And at the very beginning, I thought we should have something different to use the fresh cocoa beans by using the yeast, the hops, those things to do the fermentation. It seems it's like the process of the fermentation of the cocoa bean in the cocoa farms. And then actually, some of the suppliers asked me, are you doing the fermentation of cocoa beans in your factory? Is it possible? Because we have to do it in our fermentation house. It got the wooden box, those things in a large box, and got the banana leaves to cover it and control the temperature. It's not easy. If you want to add those ingredients of the beer into the wooden box, it would take something like the catalyst to speed up the fermentation. We are not sure about what will happen. And then I asked them that maybe I just try to see what happened. And then it takes something very complicated. It's tedious to do these things in Hong Kong. And then because of the size of our production factories is not large, so we cannot do this in our factory. We have to rent a warehouse, a small warehouse to do this. I think the result is not very satisfying. And then I tried the dried cocoa beans and found out it's got the advantage to use the dried cocoa bean, and it saves the time and then save the place as well. So next on the next stage, we go ahead for the dried cocoa bean, and it works well. So this is what we found out using the dried cocoa beans better.
So when you mix them together, are you adding a liquid so that can all kind of steep together? Or is that all going in dry? How's that work?
It's quite complicated on the process. I can't tell you all in detail, but it takes some steps to mix the dried cocoa bean with the different ingredients of the beer production. It has to go through the step by step and then go through certain temperature and then control the acidity. And then later on, and the time as well, how long we should do the first stage and then the second stage, then it has to be step by step. We cannot put all them together. No.
Okay, I see. So with the yeast then, are you using yeast that they have harvested from a batch of beer or fresh yeast that they have cultured up?
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, my book on pairing craft beer and craft chocolate is available now on Amazon and on the Bean to Barstool shop. Pairing Beer and Chocolate, a guide to bringing the flavors of craft beer and craft chocolate together, is out now. This paperback book explains the process of pairing beer and chocolate, includes a guide to hosting a pairing at home, walks through dozens of beer styles to provide style-by-style pairing guidance, and gives room for taking your own pairing notes along the way. This is the only book on pairing beer and chocolate available. Grab your copy now at the link in the show notes or on Amazon. If you manage a tap room, bookstore, chocolate shop, or cafe and want to stock the book, get in touch about our easy wholesale process. Beer and chocolate belong together, and this book is your guide to getting the most out of every pairing.
Actually, the beer maker are very generous. They just give me the yeast they are using for making their beer. So at the very beginning, I asked them how to use these kinds of yeast, and then they were so kind to tell me how to do it, and then how long that they have been using for making the fermentation for the beer. So I just take this as a reference to do this as similar to the beer at the very beginning. And then I found the difference between our cocoa bean and the fresh cocoa bean, a dry cocoa bean, and also the difference between the germinated barley, the bar, those things, the hop, those things are different. So we have to work out different experiments to find out which one is the criteria we should go to do for making the cocoa bean. And then it takes a long time to do this experiment.
Sure.
Yeah.
And which brewery is this that you're working with?
Yeah, I have to say thank you to Black Kite Beer and then the Dead Man Beer. They are so kind. I have to say thank you to them.
You mentioned you've got multiple steps that you're doing this with. How are you incorporating the flavor of the barley and hops into this process? Can you explain any of that?
It's quite complicated. It's a kind of fermentation. When the cocoa bean, we have to heat up the cocoa bean and the yeast and the germinated barley and the hops and the dried hops, and then we put in certain stage, and then we have to add some little bit amount of the water as well. So after certain period and then temperature controlled inside the fermentation box, it got some different smell. We have to detect the smell of the alcohol. Well, we have to check it every day. And then we have the acidity detector to check the acidity. We have to smell it. And then, for example, after we have add the yeast on to the cocoa beans for the first and the second day, it does smell a little bit of the alcohol. And then after the third day, the smell of the alcohol getting stronger. And then after the fourth and the fifth day, the smell of the alcohol will drop down. It will not increase, it will drop down. And then we check the acidity on different stage. And then sometimes I take a long spoon to pick up some of the stuff and then taste it to see any difference in the taste. And then we add the other ingredient on the next stage and then to see the difference. And then just doing these kinds of steps and experiment. We just keep on working on it. Sure. And then one day I find the taste is very good and the smell is good. And then it doesn't have any problem on the mold or those things. It doesn't have mold. So we can take it out and then just do the next stage, such as roasting, to see if they still have the taste and the smell of the beer and alcohol and the taste as well. So keep on working on it. Just hard to explain all the detail, you know.
Yeah. No. So I'm looking at your beer bar right now, and I see you're using Trinidad and Tobago cacao. What led to choosing that origin for this bar?
Oh yeah, that's one. That one is one of my favorite cacao bean because the quality is very good, very stable. And then actually, before we are using the cocoa bean from Trinidad and Tobago, we were using the cocoa bean from Indonesia. And the cocoa bean is very strong in the spices, and then not very fruity. And then after we have got the cocoa bean from Trinidad and Tobago, and I found their beans having higher taste of the fruity and nutty as well. And I'm thinking that if I use these kinds of cocoa beans to do the beer fermentation, what would be the result? Because I don't want to having the beer with some taste of the spice. I would rather have the beer with some more fruity and nutty flavoring notes. So yes, it is the result we choose Trinidad and Tobago. And also that I found the information that the cocoa bean of this farmland, they're having the ESG certificate. They are having the proof of the sustainability, and then they are helping the farmers. So this is the reasons we are using the cocoa beans.
Sure. Well, I see you're using those beans for several other bars. Is that the only origin you're using right now, or are you still using Madagascar and the others for other bars?
Oh yeah, we are using the cocoa bean from different places such as Madagascar, Peru. We are still using Peru. Actually, we are having the experiment on more varieties of the cocoa beans from Venezuela recently. So you will have more chocolate products from different places of the origin in the coming few months.
Great. Well, I've got in front of me the whiskey aged bar and the rice koji fermented bar. Both of those I see are also Trinidad and Tobago. Let's talk about the whiskey bar. Tell me a little bit about how you developed that.
It's very interesting because when I have done the beer fermentation chocolate, I was so interested about the process of fermentation. And then some people asked me, can you do the flavor of the whiskey? And they have tried my beer fermented chocolate, and then they said, this is very impressive. Can you do something like whiskey fermented? And then I thought, we cannot have whiskey on the process of fermentation. For making whiskey is another kind of alcoholic production process. So I was thinking that it's impossible to use fermentation to make the whiskey chocolate. And then I just remind me, I have done some experiment on the aging process before. Actually, in many years ago, I met an Italian cheesemaker. He talked about the production of his cheese. He got some flavors of the red wine, coffee, different, even black pepper. It's very interesting. I tried this cheese and I was thinking, how do you do these kinds of cheese? Because it's favorite cheese. I couldn't find any pepper inside the cheese. I can see that is a very thin layer on the surface of the cheese. The thin layer is covered by the red wine, and some of them covered by the coffee, and some of them covered by the ingredients like the pepper. And I asked them how to do it. And then that Italian guy was so kind that he taught me, and he told me that it's not difficult. you could just do it by yourself. He just doing the aging process. He said it's aging process. Inside his cheese production room, that is temperature control and humidity control, he just brushed the red wine on the surface of the cheese every day. just keep on brushing on the red wine on it. On the cheese every day for about 6 months. And I said, 6 months? 6 months you're doing the job like brushing the red wine on it, brushing the coffee on it? Yes, it takes the time. And then finally, the cheese will have the smell and the taste of the red wine and coffee, and whatever you add on it, it will have the taste and the smell as well. And I think, oh, this is interesting. Can I do this kinds of aging process on my cocoa bean? I just ask myself for this kinds of question. It's silly question. But I like to do the experiment, or always like to do the experiment. So when the people ask me if I can make the whiskey chocolate, I just thinking whiskey is very strong in alcohol. It got a very high percentage of the volatile alcohol, and the taste is very strong. So what should I do for this aging process may help. So I started to do the aging process of the cocoa bean. And then after sometimes about, I do the test for 1 month, 2 months, and then 3 months. Just keep on working on the length of the period to see the difference. And then after about 6 months, it takes a very long time. It's very similar to the cheese maker. And then the taste is so strong that I feel I'm drinking the whiskey. I just surprised that it takes a long time to do this kinds of whiskey chocolate, but the taste is so strong. It's interesting that I just have another question. Can I keep these kinds of whiskey taste inside the chocolate after I have finished all the chocolate production process, such as refining, coning, and then aging, and then tempering? And then how long can I keep the flavor of the whiskey inside the chocolate after I have packed the chocolate inside the packing? And then because we have to sell the product to the market, we have to state the the day of the best before. We have to make sure the taste of the whiskey still exists before the day of the best before. Because if the people who buy our chocolate and then he open the packaging and then eat the chocolate, if he find that is not any whiskey inside, not any taste of the whiskey inside, he will complain. Yeah,
for sure.
So we have to make sure that the taste of the whiskey still exists inside the chocolate before the best day or before. Finally, we just found out when the cocoa beans aged inside the whiskey for about 6 months, and then the taste of the whiskey still exists after we have done the final product chocolate bar, and then it can exist for nearly a year. That is very impressive. I have done some of the chocolate with the aging process only 1 or 2 months, and then the taste of the whiskey can only keep inside the chocolate for 2 to 3 weeks. Oh, it will all be far away after 2 to 3 weeks. We cannot taste and we cannot find any taste of the whiskey after that few weeks.
That's such a big difference.
Yeah, very difference. Yeah.
Well, I'm very interested about the rice koji fermented chocolate. Tell me about developing that.
Oh, this one is very difficult. I have visited some of the sake factory in Japan before, and it's lucky that I got some good relationship with the Japanese sake factory. And then when I was thinking to do a series of the alcoholic chocolate, beer is the first one, whiskey is the second one, and then the third one, I was thinking that what kinds of the alcoholic drinks I tried. And then in Hong Kong, in the recent years, sake is the most popular in Hong Kong. I remember one of the Japanese sake ambassadors, he told me Hong Kong is the best place for selling sake because they have the statistics in 2018. Hong Kong is the highest number of consuming sake among the world.
Wow.
Yeah, more than America, more than mainland China, more than even Japan.
Wow. That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, this is amazing. I heard what he mentioned about this, and he said he was surprised at these kinds of statistics, at the figures, that he was very surprised. And I was very surprised as well. So later on, when I'm thinking about what kinds of the alcoholic drinks should add into the flavors of the chocolate, I think the third one should be sake. And then I have tried different types of sake before, and then I like some of the sake. They have some fruity and nutty taste. It's not just an alcohol drink. It's very complicated I was thinking to do the aging process by using sake and the cocoa bean together, similar to the whiskey. It's interesting that it failed. I have tried to do the experiment by putting sake and the cocoa bean together inside a container for 3 to 4 months. And then the result is it doesn't appear to have the taste of the sake at all. We cannot find the taste of the sake inside the cocoa bean or even inside the chocolate. I was surprised. What happened? Is this something wrong? And then later on, I found it's because of the alcoholic level of sake is much lower than whiskey. It's the alcohol. And the taste inside of the sake cannot enter into the cocoa bean. So I have to think about the other way to do it. And then I think I have to find out the basic material of the sake production. And then I asked the sake maker in Japan, what you are working on the production of the sake. And then he told me some of the basic process. And it involves some yeast as well, the wines, and then he mentioned about some of the sake leaf, and then having the koji. And I said, I know about koji because in Hong Kong, some of people using the koji as a kind of cosmetic things to improve the cell repairing. It seems it can have the process of fermentation similar to beer production. And then I asked them to have some of the rice koji, so they have to send it from Japan to Hong Kong. And then I tried to do the experiment by using the rice koji. And then similar to the beer fermentation, it has to take a long time to do the experiment, just keep on trying and then try by error. And then later on, I make these kinds of rice koji chocolate. It's interesting. Yeah, and then finally I make it.
So you're actually letting the koji do a fermentation process directly on the beans?
Yeah.
How long does that take?
It's longer than the beer production. It's longer than the beer fermentation process. I think that is some of the secrets of the process that the Japanese didn't tell me. I think they are very protective.
Sure.
They just told me about the basic process. You try. I give you the rice koji, you try.
That's funny.
Yeah. I think they have something confidential. Yeah, sure. So I just doing experiment. It's different from the beer fermentation. It doesn't have so much ingredient comparing to the beer production. It's very simple. And the temperature is higher than the beer fermentation. The temperature is higher. When they are making the sake, they have to cover the barrel of the rice and the koji and the yeast together by a close, and then steam it for a long time to make it to have the fermentation to increase the temperature as well. Sure. So we try to do something similar to the sake production.
What impact do you feel like the koji has directly on the cacao bean?
I think something is very different from beer fermentation on the cacao bean. The koji is stick to the cacao bean. It's like something they are sticky together. They seems to generate some of the alcoholic liquid, and then these kinds of alcoholic liquid will get inside the cacao bean. And then after we have done the process for some days, and then we measure the taste, the level of the alcohol on the cacao bean, we find inside the cacao bean, the alcoholic level is increasing. It's very interesting. And it's similar to the wines for making the sake. I remember the Japanese guy told me that for a certain time of period, the alcoholic level inside the wines will increase. That means it's the successful of the sake production process. So I just try to see if I can find out the alcoholic level inside the cacao beans. And then later on, I found, yes, it got some alcohol inside the cacao beans.
How are you determining that? Are you doing an actual lab test on the beans to measure that?
We have to send the cacao beans to the laboratory to test. I asked the technician to see, to test if we could find some alcoholic inside the cacao beans. So he did the test for me, and then he showed me the report. It got some alcohol inside.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so it took a long time to do it.
Well, I also want to talk about your coffee aged chocolate with the Yirgacheffe coffee from Ethiopia. I understand that is a unique process that you're using for that as well.
Oh yeah, this one is the aging process. I roast the Yirgacheffe coffee bean by myself because I'm a coffee roaster. I have the roaster, and I have roast coffee beans for nearly 6 years. So I know how to roast the coffee bean. And then, but I have to choose the right kinds of tasting profile of the coffee bean that we are using for the aging process. We have to put the roasted coffee bean with the cacao bean together inside our container. We have to control the temperature and the humidity inside the container. So we are doing the similar process of the cheese maker. We just put them for about 1 month, and then 2 months, and then 3 months, and then test for the aroma and the tasting and the smell, those things after 1 month, and then the second month and the third month, we just doing these kinds of testing to see the difference between the product of different periods. And then later on, I found that after 6 months, it's very similar to whiskey. After the 6 months, the taste is very strong. And then after something is different from the coffee aged cacao beans and the whiskey aged cacao beans. For the whiskey, if we aged it more than 6 months, it doesn't make any difference. For example, we have some of the cacao beans aged with whiskey for nearly 10 months, nearly 11 months. It doesn't make any difference with the 6 months. But for the coffee, the taste is getting stronger and stronger the longer we age them. So for the cocoa beans, we aged with the Yirgacheffe cocoa beans for 12 months. The taste is very strong, and it will not diminish. It will not disappear. After we have aged for over 12 months, the taste and smell of the coffee can keep inside the cocoa bean and the final product chocolate for a very long time. So we decide to age the cocoa bean with the Yirgacheffe coffee bean for at least 6 months. And then the longest one is go to 12 months.
Yeah, I had the 12 months, and I was amazed when I opened that package how fresh the coffee aroma was in that chocolate. I noticed you didn't make that into a bar. What I got were like the little buttons, basically. Why did you do a different format for those rather than making the bar?
Yeah, it's very interesting that when at the very beginning, when we made this Yirgacheffe coffee bean chocolate bar, and then we put it on the market, most of the customers, they like this product. But I got some feedback. They asked me that, can I do it in a small size? They like to have some small pieces put in the mouth rather than a long bar. They try to break it down every time and they want to try it, especially when they are drinking coffee. I asked them, what size do you like? Do you want to have a round size or square size or the carrot size? A small one, we have the 5-gram carrot size. They said, no, we want to have something like the small pellet. So we have bought the mold and then put onto the mold and then spread out and then make the final product. It's a small pellet size. like this is the final product we have done for these kinds of customers. Later on, we find compared to the bar, this small size is more popular.
You're aging that cacao with the coffee. Is that before or after you've roasted the cacao beans?
Actually, we roast the cacao bean first.
Okay.
We roast the cacao beans, and then we roast the coffee bean. We remove the husk of the cacao bean. It's only the lip. Then we put the coffee bean and the lips together. This one takes a long time because we have tried to use the broken cacao lips before. And when we mix them together, it is the first problem. You cannot separate the coffee bean from the broken pieces of the lips.
Sure.
They just like a whole box of the powder. You cannot separate it. Even the coffee bean is not in powder form. But when we look at the barrel, wow, how can you separate that?
Yeah.
It's impossible. This is the first time we found tedious. We have the headache on separate them. And then later on, I asked my partners that if we can just remove the husk and then keep the whole cacao bean. We don't want to break the cacao bean. Just put the cacao bean and the coffee bean together. So it's easier to separate when they are in a complete bean. And then we have to use our hands to remove the husk. It takes a long time to remove the husk. And then it's quite complicated to do this kinds of process. All are handmade. And it's only the satisfaction is the final results that we find the taste is very good. We enjoy it. So later on, we have to ask some part-time people to help us to do this kinds of tedious job.
What story are you telling with Chocobien?
That is not any romance of Chocobien. Actually, when we are thinking about chocolate, the first time to do making chocolate in our shop in 2009, it was an ice cream shop at the very beginning. We start to have the bean to bar. Later on, it got me the idea that it seems to unlock a secret box. So it can have something more interesting. Some people say you can make chocolate, but not change the flavor of chocolate. You cannot change the character of the seed. But now we can have different kinds of experiment and process to make use of the seed, to use that seed to make something more interesting, not just chocolate. You can have different flavors of the chocolate. I enjoy the process of making different experiments. I enjoy the final product. So I don't mind how long that I spend on doing the experiment to develop the flavor. I just enjoy the result. This is not a kind of romance, but it is a kind of satisfaction.
I love those final thoughts Arron shared about the freedom to experiment and play with ingredients and flavors in bean-to-bar chocolate. Just like in beer, the preservation of classic methods and the excitement of discovering new ones can and should exist side by side. Both contribute to the boundless variety of chocolate. You can order Chocobien's chocolate at the link I'll put in the show notes. Thanks to Arron for coming on the show today and to all of you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Bean to Barstool.